The night did not arrive gently. It came tearing across the frontier like a verdict, dragging cold wind through dry grass and broken fences, carrying the smell of ash, iron, and old gunpowder. Somewhere beyond the hills, a coyote cried. Not from hunger, not from fear, but from a loneliness so sharp it cut through the dark. A horse staggered through that night. Its rider leaned low in the saddle, coat torn open by thorn and bullet, blood stiff along his sleeve. Every breath scraped his ribs. Every hoofbeat sounded too loud, as if the land itself were listening. He did not look back. He already knew what chased him. Some things followed, even when unseen. They once called him Eli Rourke, a go-go cowboy, fast with a rope, faster with a horse, reckless enough to think the frontier owed him something. That name now lived on paper nailed to saloon walls, ink beneath the words dead or alive. The paper lied in small ways and told the truth in large ones. The horse stumbled again. Eli slid from the saddle before it collapsed, boots sinking in a sand still warm from the day's dying sun. He pressed his forehead to the animal's neck, feeling the wild pulse slow, then fade. This horse had carried him farther than fate ever intended. He did not say goodbye. Out here, goodbyes were a luxury. He cut the saddle loose, took the rifle, the water skin, and left the rest. Survival had taught him what mattered. Everything else was weight. He walked until the land rose slightly and the wind shifted. Smoke appeared ahead, thin, uncertain, like a thought not yet spoken aloud. A camp. Eli slowed. Camps meant people. People meant questions. Questions led to bullets. But the cold pressed harder, and his vision blurred at the edges. Even a hunted man had limits. The fire was small. One flame. One figure seated near it, wrapped in a dark shawl, back turned. No laughter. No clinking bottles. No horses tied nearby. Just quiet and the sound of burning wood thinking to itself. Eli stopped at the edge of the firelight, rifle low but ready. The figure moved. Not fast. Not afraid. Just aware. She stood slowly, turning to face him. She was not young. Not fragile. Her hair, dark with silver woven through it, was braided tight down her back. Her face bore the marks of time and decision. Sunlines, wind, and a scar tracing her jaw like a reminder carved by fate itself. She did not reach for a weapon. She simply looked at him. Firelight flickered between them, stretching their shadows long and distorted across the sand. For a moment, the world held its breath. Eli lowered the rifle first. She nodded once. Acknowledging the choice, he took a step forward, and the pain caught him. White and sudden, his legs buckled. He dropped to one knee, then both, hand digging into the dirt as his breath tore free. She crossed the space in 3 strides. Strong hands caught him before his face hit the ground. Not gentle, certain, she guided him closer to the fire, pressed a canteen to his lips without asking. The water tasted metallic and alive. He drank until his hands shook. She pulled his coat aside, eyes narrowing as she saw the wound. The bullet had grazed him, carving flesh instead of bone, but it was fresh and angry. She tore cloth, cleaned it, packed it. Her movements were practiced, efficient, learned the hard way. Eli watched her hands, scarred, steady, unafraid. Hands that had buried someone. Hands that had chosen to keep living anyway. When she finished, she sat back. The fire cracked softly. The wind moved on. "You're being hunted," she said at last. Not a question, he nodded. "So am I." That gave a pause. She stood and fed the fire more wood. Sparks jumped upward like brief prayers before dying out. "I'm Mara Quinn," she said. "This land took my husband. Men took my son. I didn't let it take me." Her words were plain, heavy, like headstones without names. "I won't bring trouble to your fire," Eli said. "I can move on." Mara looked past him, into the darkness where riders could be hiding, where memories waited like traps. Then she looked back at him. "You'll bleed out before dawn," she said. "Seat." He did. She handed him a strip of dried meat. He ate without pride, without thanks, because hunger did not care about dignity. They shared the fire in silence. The night deepened. Stars burned cold and sharp overhead. Somewhere far away, Hooves thundered, then faded. Eli stared into the flames and saw another fire. Years ago, outside a small house he never returned to. A woman standing in a doorway, hands folded, eyes asking a question he was too afraid to answer. Mara watched him without staring. "You were running before tonight," she said. "Yes." Running from something or towards something. He thought of the posters, the bodies, the faces that visited him in sleep. "I don't know anymore." That answer seemed to satisfy her. Later, when the fire burned low, Mara laid out a blanket beside it and nodded for him to rest. He hesitated, then lay down, rifle within reach. Sleep came in fragments. Gunshots. Wind. A woman's voice lost in darkness. He woke to a sound that didn't belong. Footsteps that Eli's eyes snapped open. His hand closed around the rifle. Mara was already standing, knife in hand, body angled toward the dark point. Three shapes emerged from the night. Men on horseback, coats long, hats low. Their faces were hard to see, but their intent was not. Bounty hunters. One of them smiled when he spotted Eli. "Well," the man said, voice carrying easy cruelty, "look what the wind dragged in." Mara stepped forward just slightly. "Enough. He's not yours," she said. The man laughed. "Every man's ours when there's money on his head." Eli rose slowly, pain flaring. He met the man's gaze and felt something steady settle in his chest. Fear had burned itself out long ago. The leader's eyes flicked to Mara. "You alone out here, miss? Dangerous way to live." "So is following me," she replied. The silence stretched. Wind tugged at coats. Fingers hovered near triggers. Then something unexpected happened. One of the horses spooked. A distant gunshot echoed from the hills. Someone else hunting someone else. The moment shattered. Mara moved. She kicked fire into the air. Sparks exploded upward, blinding. Eli fired once, not to kill, but to scatter. The night erupted with sound and chaos. They ran, not away from each other, but together. They vanished into the dark, leaving the fire to die behind them. By dawn, the camp was cold ash, and somewhere beyond the hills, two wounded souls moved forward, bound not by promises, but by the simple, dangerous choice to survive one more day. And in the deep of that night, unspoken, a question lingered between them, one that neither yet dared to ask. Morning arrived without kindness. The sun lifted itself over the hills like an unblinking eye, revealing a land scraped raw by wind and time. Dust rolled across the open plain in pale sheets, erasing tracks as if the earth itself wanted no witnesses. Eli and Mara moved before the light fully claimed them. They did not speak. They did not need to. Survival had already taught them the same language. Walk when the wind covers your sound. Stop when the birds go quiet. Drink sparingly. Trust nothing that looks easy. Eli's side burned with every step. The wound had closed enough to keep him moving, but not enough to let him forget it was there. Pain had become a companion, one he no longer argued with. Mara walked ahead, rifle low, eyes scanning the land like she was reading a map only she could see. She knew this country in the way grief knows a heart. Intimately, unforgivingly. By noon, the sky darkened without warning. Clouds stacked high and fast, rolling in like an army. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain and something colder. The storm was coming. They reached a narrow cut in the land where stone walls rose on both sides. Not shelter, but concealment. Mara gestured, and they slipped inside just as the first drops fell, heavy, violent, turning dust to mud in seconds. Rain hammered the earth. Thunder cracked overhead, loud enough to rattle bone. Eli leaned against the rock, breath shallow. Water ran down his face, mixing with sweat and blood. His strength was bleeding out of him, drop by drop. Mara noticed. She always did. She moved closer, bracing him when his knees threatened to give. Her shoulder was solid. Real. She said nothing, but the message was clear. Fall later. Not now. They waited out the storm, crouched together, backs to stone, listening to the sky tear itself apart. In that narrow space. Memories crept in. Eli saw fire again. A barn burning. Men shouting. A choice made too late. He clenched his jaw until it ached. Mara watched the rain and saw a different night. A door kicked open. A child's scream cut short. She pressed her lips together and did not let the sound escape. When the storm finally passed, the land was changed. The air smelled clean and sharp, but danger lingered. They moved again to by late afternoon. They reached the ruins of a small settlement. 3 collapsed buildings, blackened by old fire. The bones of wagons lay scattered like broken ribs. Silence clung to the place, thick and watchful. Mara slowed. Her hand tightened on the rifle. "This place is wrong," Eli murmured. She nodded. They searched carefully. No fresh tracks. No movement. Just ghosts in what had once been a schoolhouse. Mara stopped. She knelt and picked something up from the floor that a child's drawing. Crude lines. A house. A woman. A boy holding her hand that Mara's fingers trembled. Eli saw the way her shoulders tightened, the way she breathed through it like a wound reopening. "He passed through here," she said quietly. Eli didn't ask who. They buried the drawing under a stone, like a promise made too late. That night, they made camp miles away, hidden among low trees. The fire was small again. Careful. Eli sat across from Mara, watching her face in the flicker of flame. There were things he wanted to say. Apologies for sins she didn't know, confessions that wouldn't save anyone. Instead, he asked, "Why help me?" Mara stared into the fire. "Because no one helped him," she said. "And because he didn't ask me to." That answer settled between them, heavy and honest. Later, when sleep came, it was shallow. Eli woke to whispers of movement. He rolled, rifle up. A shape burst from the brush. Not a man, not a wolf. Lean. Starved. Desperate. It lunged. Eli fired. Missed. Mara moved without thought. One clean shot. The wolf dropped at her feet, breath steaming into the cold air. They stood there, hearts pounding, staring down at the animal. Hunger had driven it. Hunger always did. Mara knelt beside it, touching its fur with something like sorrow. "Everything out here is just trying to live," she said. At dawn, they were found. Bounty hunters again. Different men. Same hunger. They came riding hard, dust rising behind them like a warning, and time to run. Eli took cover behind a fallen tree. Pain flared as he fired, sharp and blinding. He hit one rider, sent him tumbling. Another man went down screaming. Mara flanked wide, her shots precise, controlled. The fight was brutal and fast. Smoke. Shouts. The smell of blood. When it ended, 2 men lay still. The rest fled. Eli collapsed to his knees. Mara was at his side instantly. His wound had reopened. Blood soaked his shirt, dark and spreading. She pressed down hard, jaw clenched. "Stay with me," she said. It was the first time she had asked him for anything. They reached an abandoned line shack by nightfall. Barely standing, barely shelter. Mara stitched the wound by lantern light, hands steady despite the stakes. Eli watched her face as she worked, saw the lines carved by years of holding on. "Back there," he said softly. "You could have left." She didn't look up, so could you. When it was done, she sat back exhausted. The lantern flickered. For a moment, the world was just 2 people breathing in the dark. Eli felt something shift inside him. Something dangerous. Hope. Outside, the wind rose again. And somewhere beyond the hills, men still hunted. But in that small, broken shelter, 2 strangers sat closer than they had to, bound by shared wounds and a past that refused to stay buried. The wind returned before dawn, low and restless, dragging dust along the ground like it was searching for something it had lost. The shack groaned with each gust, boards shifting, nails crying out in protest. Eli lay still, eyes open, listening to the land breathe, that he knew this was the last stretch. Not because of the pain in his side, though it burned with every heartbeat, but because something inside him had gone quiet. The part that always looked for an escape. The part that believed running was the same as living. Mara rose before the light. She moved carefully, as if the air itself might break if she disturbed it. She stepped outside and stood for a long moment, staring east where the sky was just beginning to pale. When Eli joined her, she didn't turn. They'll come again, she said. Yes. They won't stop. No. The truth hung between them, unadorned. Mara finally looked at him. There's a canyon south of here. Narrow. Only one way in. One way out. Eli understood what she was offering. Not safety. A stand. They left at first light. The canyon cut deep into the land, its walls rising high and close, stone smoothed by centuries of wind and water. The path wound inward, tight and unforgiving. Sound echoed strangely there. Every step, every breath returned louder, heavier. They set their trap without ceremony. Mara chose her position high along the rock wall, where she could see without being seen. Eli stayed below, rifle braced, revolver at his side. His hands were steady now. Calm had replaced fear. By midday, the sound came. Hooves, voices, laughter too loud for men who understood danger. 5 riders enter the canyon. Eli stepped forward. The men reined in, surprise flashing across their faces. One of them recognized him instantly. Well, I'll be damned, the man said. You finally stopped running. Eli felt the weight of every choice that had led him here. He thought of fire, of a woman in a doorway, of a horse collapsing under the stars. I did, he said. The first shot cracked the air. Mara fired from above, the sound sharp and final. One rider dropped before he understood what was happening. Chaos followed. Gunfire thundered through the canyon, echoing until it sounded like a war. Dust exploded from stone. Horses screamed. Men shouted orders that no one followed. Eli fired, reloaded, fired again. Pain tore through his side, but he stayed upright. He moved because stopping meant dying. A bullet clipped his arm. Another shattered stone inches from his head. He pushed forward. One of the bounty hunters rushed him, knife drawn, eyes wild. Eli met him halfway. The fight was close and ugly. Breath against breath. Sweat and blood and fear. Eli fired once. The man fell. Above, Mara was relentless. Every shot counted. Every movement precise. But numbers pressed in. She changed position. Stone cutting in her palms, breath tight in her chest. A shot rang out too close. Mara cried out as a bullet tore through her shoulder. She stumbled, barely catching herself. Eli saw it. Something broke loose inside him. He charged. Gunfire chased him, thunder behind him, but he did not stop. He reached the last rider as the man tried to flee. They crashed into the dirt together. The man begged. Eli stood over him, chest heaving, gun raised. For a moment, everything went still. He saw himself reflected in the man's eyes. Not as a hero, not as a monster, but as someone standing at a final crossroad. Eli lowered the gun. Go, he said. The man didn't argue. He ran. The canyon fell silent except for the wind. Eli dropped to his knees. Mara made her way down slowly, clutching her shoulder, blood soaking her sleeve. She stopped in front of him. You didn't have to let him live, she said, I know. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. They left the canyon before nightfall. That Mara's wound was bad, but not fatal. Eli bounded as best he could, hands shaking more from emotion than pain. They walked until the land opened again, until the sky stretched wide and forgiving to the edge of the plain. They stopped. This was where paths separated. They both felt it. Mara looked toward the horizon. I'll keep moving. There are places that don't remember my name yet. Eli nodded. She turned to him then, really looked at him, and in her eyes he saw the question neither of them had spoken aloud. The one that had been there since the fire, since the night, since the moment two broken people chose not to walk away. Her voice was quiet. Will you love me? The wind carried the words, fragile and brave. Out into the open land, Eli's throat tightened. Love had once felt like a promise he was too afraid to keep. Now it felt like a choice, one he could finally make. I don't know how to love without failing, he said. Mara stepped closer. Then fail, but stay. He reached for her hand. It was warm, real. I will, he said. They stood there as the sun dipped low, painting the world in gold and shadow. They did not ride off together that night. Healing takes time. Trust takes longer. But they walked in the same direction for a while. And sometimes That is enough. The one listening to this story now. If you've ever been hunted by your past, if you've ever stood at the edge of a choice that terrified you, remember this. You don't have to outrun your wounds forever. One day, you can turn and face them. And when you do, even in the darkest canyon, love might still be waiting.